Hey YouTube, in this video I'll show you how I created this loose urban sketch from start to finish and share my tips and techniques for beginners that will work 100% of the times. For this piece I wanted to use a grand architecture that has character and history. Well, I live in Canada, so I looked up a building in Ontario and fell in love with this beautiful limestone City Hall building in Kingston. I'm going to be using that as a reference today. This brings me to my tip number 1. Use a reference from photo or live that inspires your creativity. If you're not interested in the scene, you won't be interested in giving it your best. Tip number 2. It's important to remember that loose urban sketching is all about capturing the essence of a place in a few quick strokes. So focus on getting the overall structure and composition right. One of the best techniques for doing this is to start by making quick sketches of the basic structures and landmarks in the area. For composition, notice the buildings, trees, roadways, and other notable features of the area. Once you have a good sense of the layout, start by adding more detailed sketches of specific objects or people. It took me a long time to get comfortable with drawing architecture and watercolors. It's important to remember that you have to find your own style, and you will with experimenting and practice eventually. By practice, I mean going through tons of sketchbooks and sketching daily. I literally take my sketchbook in the car, cafe, grocery stores, walks, even to the doctor's. I know that might sound strange or silly, but while you're waiting in the waiting room, you can really get a good amount of practice down. Heck, I even take it to the washroom. Okay, I'm just kidding, not to the washroom. I know personally, drawing people loosely was a challenge for me, and I'm learning. Those of you familiar with my works know how I do tons of gouache portraits that are quite rendered. It's hard to switch your mindset to draw loosely if you're so used to one style. This brings me to tip number 3. Loose urban sketching is all about capturing the energy and not realism. When drawing people, consider capturing the silhouettes first, and you have time to add shadows and details. I did this practice in watercolors to learn how to capture postures, energy, and movement. I can do a more detailed video on this if you're interested. Let me know in the comments below. At this stage in your sketching, it's time to make conscious decisions about shadows and focal points. Tip number 4. Sit down and pause and maybe come back to it after some tea and fresh pair of eyes and decide which areas you want to highlight. For coloring, here's my tip number 5. Decide on the mood of your sketch and pick colors accordingly. You could really be funky and pick oranges and blues or purples, or keep it muted. Don't be afraid to try different styles. You will eventually gravitate towards a specific style and develop your own while doing so. Tip number 6. Most likely the most important tip in urban sketching is never draw all the details. Take the creative liberty to create your own world within that world. The idea is to capture the essence and vibe of the scene and not create a hyper-realistic drawing. It's perfectly okay if you're missing a few windows or they don't look exactly the way they look in real life. Tip number 7. Do not color everything. Leave lots of white space. Think of the source of the light in your picture and add shadows and highlights to add depth. My favorite color to use for shadows is deep grayish blues or purples. I also like to use a combination of microns, brush pens, and watercolors. I'm at a stage where I don't need a pencil sketch anymore, and I go straight in with ink. It helps me commit to the style from the start. Tip number 8. Be conscious of the weight of your line. Always start out thin and then go bolder in areas that need thicker strokes. You can say a lot more with fewer lines. Trust me. If you followed me for some time, you know how embarrassed I was about sharing my urban sketches or watercolor pieces. It has taken me such a long time to learn this style of art, and I'm still not 100% comfortable with it, but I'm comfortable enough to share what worked and what didn't work. The tips that I've shared here are all the things that have helped me improve over time. Don't get discouraged if it doesn't work out initially. I know it's easier said than done, but if you really feel down about your sketch or drawing, just watch my art fails and see this video again to get yourself up. Remember, if I can do it, you can do it too. Splatter technique is my favorite to add. I totally recommend that. It's so fun. Is there something on my face? This part is what I call the juicy part. Tiny details like that really add so much character to your work. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, subscribe so I can share more art and tips in the upcoming videos. Oh yeah, I might be going to a gorgeous place in Canada very soon, so expect lots of urban sketching. Catch you in the next one.